This video is brought to you by Vograce. Is it considered gatekeeping if someone does not want to share manufacturer information? Hello, we are currently at VidCon, which is kind of crazy. I'm actually not technically supposed to be here, but kind of last minute decided to go to VidCon because I had a friend who was vending and I decided to join along. Also deep into the Mualcaina Macy lore. I actually used to go to VidCon back in 2015 to 2017 or so I used to go basically every summer. So this is a bit of a nostalgic convention for myself. I remember at the time I got meet and greets for Liza Koshy, Remy Cruz, Troye Sivan. Well, basically, I was just interested in seeing how VidCon has changed throughout the years. What I have noticed from past VidCon vlogs within the last couple of years, there are more children, which I have seen more children and families at this convention than what I'm used to, but very excited. I will show you along the journey. In this vlog, I do want to talk about manufacturing basics. What is it? How do you go about finding a manufacturer? And all of the little details in between. So going into Artist Alley, you might be a little overwhelmed as to how you want to design and make your products. Usually a lot of artists go into making prints because the barrier to entry is much lower. You can easily go to a print shop, have them print your art. But in the case of products such as keychains, enamel pins, Ita bags, and so on, most of the time it has a bit of a higher barrier to entry. There are two different ways of producing the products that you want to create. A lot of people tend to go the DIY route. It's more cost effective. You can control how many and how much product you have at one time. You don't need to order a minimum order quantity of 100 or 1,000. But if you're doing it yourself, you can control the amount and quantity that you need, whether that's just making 5 at a time, and not worry about putting too much money into inventory. The other option is to outsource production, which is what a lot of people have been doing lately in Artist Alley. Most of the time, manufacturers tend to be outside of the United States. The most common way to find manufacturers is through Alibaba.com, which is basically a marketplace of different factories. Most of them are in China, but you can find ones in Thailand and so on. If you are starting in the Artist Alley scene, navigating Alibaba can be a little overwhelming, which is why I'm very excited to introduce the sponsor of this video, Vograce. Vograce is an art manufacturer that offers high-quality products with low minimum order quantities, aka MOQs. As someone who has been vending at cons for over 4 years now, I've been working with Vograce since the beginning, so when they reached out with an opportunity to try out some of their products, you know I had to do it. I wanted to try out my new original character designs on their desk mats, leatherette and smart ring binder notebooks, and of course their sticker book. I've always wanted to improve my in-person branding, so I also made these lanyards and acrylic pin badges with my OCs and logo. Vograce does have a low minimum order quantity, as low as 3 pieces for multiple designs for a majority of their products, which makes it great for artists on a budget or just starting out. They have VIP deals on the 10th of every month, and VIP members such as myself can also enjoy an additional 8% off for a stackable deal and earn 1.5 times points per dollar spent. Try Vograce for yourself through the link in the description box. I'm going to be honest, a lot of people tend to be very intimidated by Alibaba and navigating manufacturers there. I will say that you can't really go wrong with most of the manufacturers. If anything, all you have to do is just choose the top couple manufacturers in the search bar, order a sample, and you're all good. I wouldn't recommend going all in with a particular product. It is a bit of an expense to order a sample, and usually samples, depending on the type of product, I know for myself, Ita bags tend to be around $100. It's very much worth it because you do want to provide a sample so that when you do run pre-orders or run a Kickstarter, you already have a physical product to show your customers and not necessarily a mock-up or a sketch, because people are more likely to trust you and want to invest in this particular product if you have a physical item, because not only does it show them how that item is going to look, it also communicates to them that you are serious in making this project happen. So first of all, research manufacturers, and then number 2, order a sample. I would also recommend ordering samples from multiple manufacturers and not necessarily just one, because when I was searching for an Eat-A-Bag manufacturer, I ended up with samples from 2 different manufacturers. The first one that I thought I was going to go with, I actually didn't really like as much in the quality, even though my research seemed like they would be good, and I ended up going with a second manufacturer. So that's why I'm glad that I went with 2 different ones. Don't be afraid if the sample isn't perfect. Some people tend to go through multiple rounds of samples. I do have a video on how to design and make Eat-A-Bags, as well as look for Eat-A-Bag manufacturers in this video. And I also have one on enamel pins. I will also have both of them linked down below. Those are a bit more thorough and specific to those products specifically. But in this video, I am talking about general manufacturing and outsourcing said manufacturing. If you are new to manufacturing, I do recommend starting off small. And not only that, do pre-orders. I do not recommend jumping immediately into a product if you do not know if it will sell or if there's even any demand for it, because you can easily lose out on several thousands of dollars if you just invest in, let's say, some number of keychains, but then because you didn't do pre-orders, 1, pre-orders does tell you whether people are willing to buy for it, and 2, that money that people use to pre-order can go into funding the product itself. That's why people do Kickstarters. That's why people do pre-orders. I also don't recommend doing interest forms for the most part. You can do it in order to gauge a general interest, but I wouldn't fully rely on it because anyone can click on an interest in a poll. Very easy, free to do. But if it's a pre-order, people are literally voting with their money in order to ensure that that product gets made. So just some things to think about. Highly recommend doing pre-orders. I do have a video based on how to run a pin Kickstarter, and that one could be applicable for any product. It's so interesting how different everything is. I feel like it's also less busy compared to what I remember, but that was also 7 years ago, so I know it's changed a lot. Very beautiful outside from what I remember. They do have food trucks along the side, and over there is the Anaheim Convention Center where VidCon is. Also, if you're lucky, you might find my vlogs from 7 years ago. I'm not going to tell you how to find it, but you might find it, and if you did, congratulations. So I do want to raise the question, and I'm curious on what your thoughts are. Is it considered gatekeeping if someone does not want to share manufacturer information? Please comment down below what you think before you hear my thoughts on it. So there's 2 schools of thought in terms of sharing manufacturer information, and why I don't think you should ask people for the manufacturer information unless they offer it to you. One group of people tend to say that it is very gatekeepy if people do not want to share their manufacturer information, because this is a community of other small businesses, other artists, and they have every right to know that information, because you shouldn't have other people struggle to find a good manufacturer in order to succeed. Valid thoughts on that end. I'm on the other spectrum, I would say, in terms of that thought, in that it's not gatekeepy to not share information. You don't go up to some place in Target. Granted, Target tends to wholesale, but generally speaking, you don't go to Target, you don't go to Walmart, you don't go to Marc Jacobs, Gucci. You don't go up to them asking, what is your manufacturer? Who manufactures your bags? Who does this and that? Granted, if you search hard enough, you can find said manufacturers because some of them may share that information. But if you can go through the process of asking other people for their manufacturer information, you can go about searching for a manufacturer. And honestly, in this day and age, there are so many resources to help you find a manufacturer. There are some people who are sharing their manufacturers, and you can get it from them. And it's just so silly. But that's my opinion. If you want to share your manufacturer, go for it. You can do whatever you want. I just personally don't share it. Honestly, though, if you just search hard enough, you will find my manufacturers, because that's the whole point. You should search for your manufacturers. But I am curious to hear your thoughts. Please comment down below. Do you think it's gatekeepy, and why? Very many valid thoughts in both sides, but that is just how I think of it. Hello, long time no see. It is 12:15. There's quite a good amount of people now around. I will say, though, a lot of them are more so dispersed the right side of the con. Granted, you are competing, at least in terms of Artist Alley, you are competing with a lot of people who are just here to meet creators and for the freebies, because there are a lot of industry booths sprinkled around the convention, and they do have free things like free drinks, free goodies. So I feel that a lot of people are going to those booths first. Maybe they'll move towards the left side where Artist Alley and exhibitors are located, or exhibitors as in retail exhibitors, not necessarily just industry booths. It has been picking up in this side of the con, however, still a little bit slower than what I've seen at other anime conventions, and I'm comparing this to the smaller ones like Anime Riverside, Anime Pasadena, Chibi. I would say that the demographic for VidCon tends to gear towards a lot of families, a lot of younger children. From when I used to go to VidCon back in the late 2010s, there were a lot of teenagers, very young adults. There were some children, a lot of families as well, but from the looks of it, it has trended towards a lot of younger audiences. And I'm even at the point where basically we're next to the stage, right? They will have some creators going on, panels. I do not recognize a good amount of these creators. Surprisingly, you've had kind of like a discussion on how creators have changed over the years. Back then, there tends to be a lot of bigger general creators, right? But now, because of how accessible content creators are and how there's so many famous people to that extent, there's a lot of people who are famous in their own niches, and I'm pretty sure with some of these creators, I personally don't recognize them, but they must be famous or big in their own niche. I'm only here for the day, so I don't think I'll get the full experience of how VidCon is, but from what I remember, you could spend all 3 days at VidCon, and if anything, that was the most ideal because you were able to see as many creators as you could during that period of time. Hello, it is 1:22. Again, pretty slow. There have been a few sales here and there, but for a first-time convention, at least in terms of Artist Alley, I was not expecting too much. So the hours are on the back of the badge, which is quite nice. For any convention, highly recommend having hours and scheduling on the back so that people are not confused about what time things start or end. But today is Friday, June 20th, and so it ends at 6:30 p.m. This con is a 3-day convention. I'm not quite sure why it was scheduled Thursday through Saturday, because usually from what I remember, it was always Friday through Sunday, and then you would pick up on Thursday. So interesting scheduling. Again, my snack is P-Joy, my favorite. It is the matcha flavored. Personally prefer this over the matcha Pocky. I feel like there's more matcha in the P-Joy over the Pocky, though I do assume that they're about the same. Also, even though this vlog is a bit of a filler episode until AX, look what I'm working on. Currently working on the Otani sticker, which I'll probably announce later on socials, but there's going to be a new Otani sticker. Will also be a SoCal exclusive. It's like meeting Chris for the first time. Hello. He also has a channel as well. Yeah, he's been vlogging.
Trying to.
This isn't... Who's this?
At VidCon here, the children, a lot of them, huge demographic of them, probably 80% with their families. They're bribing their parents to pay. If you want to come to VidCon, you don't know what products to bring, you don't know if you're the right fit, stickers, low-cost items, cute things, they love it. Pokemon. I've seen a couple vendors with cat items and animal items. They do well, but I will say that apparel still sells. The shirts sell. It's not like nothing is selling, but I will say minimal sales on the keychains that we had here and minimal sales on the enamel pins. Maybe it's the series that they're from. You know, the comic vibe might not be it.
For your insight, we got some amazing insight on VidCon audience. As noted, same thing, if you are going to vend here, I would not recommend expensive items because there's a lot of children here. Children like stickers. And since children like stickers and do not have a lot of money, nor do their parents want to spend a lot of money, you have to bring the lower price items. And even just walking around here, most of them tend to buy stickers and not necessarily the keychains or the pins. There were a few people who did buy a couple pins, but that was very rare and far in between. So I would say it's a little bit similar to the comic convention crowd, but they're willing to spend less money because there's a lot of free items around here. and they prefer free things. Also, if you did not know already, I will be at Anime Expo. Basically, I'll be in the same table location as the past couple years. So if you ever visited AX 2023, 2024, I will be at the same location all the way in the back, G62, letter G, row G, 62, all the way in the back. You can't miss me. I'm a big pink booth with a lot of Ita bags at the top. I have posted my catalog. I will have it linked down below in the description box. I've also had it up here so you don't miss it, and you can plan out what you want to buy just so the transaction goes very smoothly, because it can get very crowded. If you have watched my Anime Expo vlogs, you know that it is very, very crowded. Lots of people. You do not want to get stuck in the aisles, which is why I highly recommend looking at catalogs ahead of time, just to reduce the amount of time that you have to wait in line, and you can enjoy Anime Expo to its fullest because you are not stuck in the lines. You're not stuck thinking about whether you want to buy something. You already know, and you allocated that in your budget, and you're good to go. Also, if you didn't know already, I do stream on Twitch. Lately, I've been streaming, prepping for Anime Expo. I was on a bit of a hiatus. However, now that I have a little bit more free time to not have to pack Kickstarter orders, I've been streaming a little bit more frequently. They've been a lot of fun, and if you want to hang out on stream, feel free to follow me on Twitch. I'm also at Mualcaina, and I stream every week, sometimes Tuesday, sometimes Wednesday, sometimes Thursday, but usually around 12:30 Pacific time. Hello, it is 6:16. I did look at the Discord, and some people were saying that yesterday happened to be more busy, maybe because it was day one and people were excited, so they spent the money then and not today. Who knows? Apparently today was a bit more busy in terms of crowd, but that doesn't always translate into sales. Thinking back on whether I would vend here myself, I would try, but I wouldn't bring my entire display, mostly because I don't think the crowd here are willing to spend $100 on an Ita bag. Maybe sweaters I'll probably bring, definitely stickers, but kind of like what he said earlier today, definitely a lot more lower priced items. Should you try this event? Iffy. There were a few people who flew in, surprisingly. I'm a bit surprised by that because this seems to be like an event that I would only recommend if you're local, just to keep costs low. However, in terms of the audience, again, it's mostly children and families. They seem to enjoy more mainstream items. I wouldn't recommend niche items such as Oran High School Host Club, even though technically that is a little mainstream. But at least in terms of anime, it would have to be very mainstream. Possibly One Piece, Demon Slayer, perhaps. Jujutsu Kaisen. I would say similar to 626 Night Market in that it just needs to be very surface level anime products. I wouldn't recommend this event if you are not local and your costs are very high, because the Anaheim area is relatively expensive. We're very close to Disneyland. Basically across the street of the Anaheim Convention Center is the parking lot for the Disneyland parking structure. The surrounding hotels are priced high because Disneyland is nearby. There are a lot of food options, but in terms of expenses, they are going to be high just starting in. This is the same convention center as Anime Impulse OC. I have not done it since they moved from the OC Fair and Event Center the first time they had the OC version of Anime Impulse, and it's just one large location. And I did hear that Anime Impulse OC is pretty good. Apps did already go up, and I'm pretty sure they're sold out of all of the artist alley tables. I'm just not able to go because I usually hold out for SAC Anime in the hopes of getting into that event. Well, my next vlog will be Anime Expo. If you are curious about how last year's AX went, watch this video to see my experience at last year's Anime Expo, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!